Every meta weapon in War Robots can evaporate enemies within seconds, even when not equipped on heavy damage dealers. The boom weapons, despite not having the raw firepower to do so, are by far the most hated weapons in War Robots right now due to the many other annoying qualities they have. This is a completely extensive guide on how to counter the boom weapons and their most common platforms, going over everything you need to know on how to completely obliterate them, and covering the equipment available to everyone that best counters them. If anything said is wrong or additional information is needed, I will make adjustments to the pinned comment below this video, along with extras on Leo and Leech. And speaking of comments, I would love to hear any strategies or builds that you came up with that can help to counter the boom weapons. And if you have any questions or need clarification on anything, please don't hesitate to ask. But with that out of the way, let's fly right into it. The very creatively named Boom, Bash, and Pow were first released alongside Kaji in the 11.4 update, and as of now they are in their prime and causing mass destruction to any non-meta bot across the battlefield. The boom weapons have all 3 weapon slots covered, so they are available on every robot in the game. The damage they do at base isn't super high, especially for a meta weapon, but that's where literally everything else they have going for them comes into play. Their reload is incredibly quick at only 5 seconds, and starts immediately after the missiles are fired. The tracking they have is complete insanity. Like, what is this? The fact that booms come from above means they bypass all traditional cover, and you can only block them if you're standing under something. But even then, they curve around some cover and hit you then too. The boom weapons have splash. The boom weapons have splash. This means that even if you stand under cover, if it's too thin, they will simply bypass it and still hit you. It feels like you have to be kilometers under the map in order to not be hit by them. And remember their low damage? That's right. They have an increased damage multiplier whenever Deathmark is applied on their target, which is why a good 70% of players who use the boom weapons run them on the Kaji. The Kaji is an extremely quick robot that deploys mines and, what do you know, applies Deathmark and slowdown. And with the legendary pilot, they also apply EMP. And of course, they do all of this before they hit you. They also auto-home onto you when you get within 200 meters of them, and unless they hit something, they will pursue you to the ends of the earth. Oh, and when Kaji is deploying its mines, it turns invisible, which means you cannot lock onto it if you are more than 150 meters away. And the mines bypass shields. Who comes up with these? How would you even start countering something like this? Well, my biggest tip for avoiding booms is to never ever play team deathmatch. That game mode is loaded with boom campers, and there is a 99% chance you will be targeted by 20,000 missiles immediately. And the whole game mode puts you at a disadvantage because you cannot out beacon cap them. So playing only beacon game modes is my #1 recommendation, since the best counter to them is to avoid them as much as possible. In beacon game modes, the bots with boom weapons are usually dropped in the early game, since their damage to titans is really low. This is when they dominate. Even in beacon game modes, there are usually 1 or more boom setups deployed throughout the game, and of those deployed, the most common setups you need to know how to counter are the Kaji, Baglior, Nuo, Strix, Samjock, Pathfinder, and Crisis. But first, knowing how to counter the boom weapons themselves is crucial. Even if you're standing behind the tallest buildings in the map, they will still hit you. Using phase shift or activating an ability that makes you really tanky can help, but it's only a matter of time before they track you down. However, if you activate stealth, then even if they are already hurtling towards you, the booms will lose their targeting. So bots with stealth that can get right up in the faces of the enemies with booms while being cloaked are the actual best counters to them. Why don't defensive abilities work as well as stealth? Well, since a majority of boom builds are run on Kaji, the mines are another layer of defense you have to get through. You can easily tell what mines are friendly and what will end you by their color. In stealth, you can walk straight through a minefield and not be targeted. So allow me to introduce the best boom counters in the game: Scorpion, Imugi, Raven, and Loki. Starting off with the Scorpion, it has a teleport that allows it to check the box of being right behind the boom campers, and the firepower available to consistently counter 5 out of the 7 most common boom builds, with Nuo and Kaji the exceptions. However, it is the most risky out of all the platforms since it cannot cover large distances in stealth, and is reliant on the Ash Skarsgård pilot to gain stealth in the first place. Additionally, it is the most expensive to equip. Once you are behind the enemy, you only have 2 seconds of stealth left from the pilot skill. So if the enemy is in a Kaji, the stealth will expire and the mines will leave you helpless and obliterate you. This problem is less noticeable on the others, but if they do notice you in time, have quantum radar or some other countermeasure, get out of there or you're dead meat. The whiteout drone is my favorite option for countering boom builds, as the EMP disables every other countermeasure except for motherships. And speaking of motherships, mothership play is another completely game-changing aspect that allows for even more countering. For Scorpion, the lifesaver turret makes it a whole lot more dangerous for boom builds, as you can extend your stealth time to 5 seconds if you time it right as you jump, which now makes Kaji consistently counterable. My top choice in general has to be Avalon, since its cleanse stacks provide protection from the EMP, lockdown, and counter-blinding common boom platforms have. But other defensive options work too, as long as you have Lifesaver. When looking at weapon options, Scorpion only works with weapons that empty super quickly and do really high burst damage. The only ones that really meet this threshold are the Sonics, Fireworks, and Blast shotguns, but 2 of these options are available in the workshop. The Imugi has a flight ability that allows it to enter stealth. I won't go too in depth on its kit here, but if you do want to know more, shameless plug right here. The flight lasts for 8 seconds plus takeoff and landing, and Imugi is a very consistent counter to everything except Kaji, since the flight makes it hard to hit it in invisibility, and it usually runs away and leads you towards its mines. It is also a lot more tanky than the other option and has the last stand, which means you are guaranteed to survive a lethal boom strike or a round of mines. You want to get as close as possible to your target before starting stealth to maximize your attack, and always try to land back in cover when your ability ends, otherwise you are gone. Because of Imugi's long stealth and its ability to fire its weapons during stealth, you can get away with more options. A couple of my favorites are the bubble guns, vacuums, atomizer and quirker, and sonics. You still want the firepower to actually be able to take down the boom bots, so mid-range guns are not recommended for this task. Of course, Imugi has mothership synergies too. It can make use of the lifesaver turret, but I would recommend using the Frederick mothership over any other option for countering booms. It is available in Hank's shipyard right now, so it's the most accessible option. It grants extra attack and speed, which synergizes perfectly with Imugi. And because of the attack slot, you can use the lockdown blast turret with it, making the boom campers have nowhere to go. If you use this turret with Imugi, Kaji now becomes consistently counterable since it can't run. The Kestrel drone enhances Imugi's even more since it heals gray damage from its level 12 skill a total of 3 times per flight. If you had asked me a few weeks ago before making this what the best Kaji counter was, I would have most certainly not said the Loki. 3 light weapons is abysmal firepower. However, it is enough, and I found this to be the absolute most consistent Kaji counter during my testing. Turns out having infinite stealth is insane for walking up right behind them and sending them to the moon. Well, unless you're already there. It has by far the least investment cost, but you do need a couple of specific things to get it going. Chester Cohen gives Loki extra stealth when exiting your ability, and the only other thing you need is the lifesaver turret. But if you time everything right, you can come out of your ability, use your mothership, melt the boom camper with high burst weapons like Cudgel, Shredder, Halo, or Scatter, and get back in your ability without ever leaving stealth. While I did find I could vaporize a Baglior or Strix occasionally, this usually only works for the platforms with lower health, the Nuo being the only one that usually escaped because of its flight and mobility. The Loki also makes the best use out of the whiteout drone, being able to get so close, and if you upgrade to a Kestrel, it can heal gray damage 3 separate times with Chester, so it makes mistakes less punishing. However, Loki gets hit the hardest out of these options if someone has QR because of its extremely low health. The final counter is the Raven. Raven is a much different counter to the other options because it relies on sniping the campers from high in the sky at mid-range, rather than being a close-range assassin. The Raven pilot, Nessa Riggs, also gives it stealth and is again essential. Adding a jump unit to Raven is incredibly helpful to have the whole map in your view, which makes it great for countering the heavier campers. The only one it can't counter often is the Kaji and Samjok, since it will be out of range of Kaji's invisibility, and Samjok is Samjok. However, it doesn't require lifesaver and you can use any mothership along with it, along with these drones. For weapons, radiation and rust machine guns are good options. Hussar and Marquis can still work for a more budget choice, but it isn't the best one anymore. I did want to give a special mention to the Keel mothership. While not my ideal choice for countering boom campers, it does deserve its own spot on the list because of how it can evaporate lower health ones, and heavily damage the tankier ones. Again, Nuo escapes because of its speed. Samjuk can evade it as well because of its phase shift, and it does have a slot for the lifesaver, so you can use that with it too. The Mute mothership is also good for countering everything except for Strix, and what do you know, Nuo, because of their blinding immunities. But if the others can't shoot or get into ability, they are useless. I did want to mention Ravana as well, and it can work, but if you're stuck using all of your abilities dodging the booms, you don't really have any protection to escape. You can also trigger Kaji's mines and phase shift after that, but you need immunity to EMP, otherwise they will jump you. Ravana is still a counter, but not as good as the stealth bots. This final section will go over how to specifically counter the bots that were mentioned, except for Kaji, because it got beat up enough already. The Nuo is a flying bot that boosts its damage significantly, and can also transfer the damage bonuses to a teammate. It also gains several charges of counterblind. The best counter here would be Raven and Imugi, since they can consistently hit it in the air, while the Loki and Scorpion cannot. If you do not have cleanse stacks, then hitting it one time with one of your weapons triggers the blinding and gives you immunity after it ends, leaving you free to attack it. Apart from Kaji, the Baglior is the most tricky robot to counter. It has more damage boost than Strix, along with a teleport and defense points, which makes it insanely tanky. The Baglior is the most dangerous and game-ruining platform to run booms on, since it can do insane damage with them, and they will one-shot every counter if caught in a bad spot. Sacrificing your robot is well worth it in my eyes. Every robot is capable of countering it, with Loki the worst option. Bagliors with booms usually run Deathmark or Shieldbreaker, but if they run QR, you are dead, and the only hope you have is to out-beacon the whole enemy team or pray it dies. The Strix is basically a Baglior but less mobile. It comes with built-in Shieldbreaker and immunity to suppression and blinding, so the chance of them having Quantum Radar is higher. Taking them by surprise with any option is the best way to counter them if they have QR. Much like Baglior, it has enough firepower to one-shot every counter, but it's less than a problem than Baglior since it's not as tanky and slower. If you run this build, the scam joke with the boom weapons is perhaps one of the most annoying setups in the game, which is why this Loki with Whiteout, the best counter, is staying in my hangar until the booms get nerfed, specifically to counter them. If you're able to catch it off guard, it does go down relatively fast, and it doesn't do extreme damage, but definitely horrifying. Boom Pathfinder is capable of locking you down, building up more damage and speed, triggering the Deathmark boost and suppressing you, and shield breaking you with a pilot. Avalon is really recommended for countering it, as you will have a much harder time doing so if you do not have it, especially if it has Friezo. Imugi is the best counter here. Raven can do it as well, but be wary of its lockdown, as you cannot jump if it's active. And if you are using Loki with a drone that does damage, trigger the suppression and wait for it to wear off before attacking. The Crisis has 4 heavy slots: infinite stealth provided it doesn't fire, shield breaker, and a damage boost, which makes it another popular boom platform. Much like the Strix, the probability of having Quantum Radar is high, and it will one-shot. However, it is the most fragile bot on the list, and if it's caught in any unfavorable situation, it will go down at the slightest breeze, so it's an easier counter, especially to Imugi with its last stand. And that's it. Please let me know how some of these counters went for you, and if you managed to kill some. And I would love to see your posts in my community tab so we can laugh together. But I will not take any more of your time, and I will see you in the next one.